Welcome back, Pokemon trainers. My name is Gabby Snyder, and I'm joined here by Stefan Mott for round 6 of 7 today here in the top 4 of the World Cup by Victory Road, sponsored by Elgato. I know, Stefan, you have been on the sidelines for most of the day so far. What have you thought of the matches? Have you been able to catch any?
So far, it's been a really back and forth set, really exactly what we hope for in a best of 7 series like this. I feel like everyone in every game, unless you're a hardcore fan of one side or the other, always wants to see that game 7 matter. So this is going to be a pivotal one. Of course, Spain has been a team that throughout this entire tournament has been probably the strongest team as far as results go. I think back to that group stage 2 result where they went, I think, 27-1 or something. Like, an absurd win rate for Spain in this tournament so far, but China have really been taking it to them today and look on the cusp of one of the bigger upsets of this entire tournament. China, of course, not a weak team by any stretch of the imagination, but I would say in this matchup, they would have been the perceived underdogs.
Well, let's take a look at the matches that we've featured so far on stream. As right now, Team China and Team Spain, they were tied previous round 2-2, but Lin Guli was able to take the win from Alex Gomez to put Team China in the lead. So for our next match, we'll be featuring Eric Rios versus Feng, and it should be really exciting, as if Zay is able to win this the match for his team, that will secure the win for the round for China, meaning they will go on to face Italy next week in the finals.
Yeah, of course, Italy and Spain, probably the two most scary teams in the bracket that remain anyway on paper. So from like the top 8 on, I mean, obviously we had some incredibly strong teams like South Korea in there, we had the US in there, and it's going to be an interesting sort of turn of events to see whether or not we have an all-European final or whether China can sneak in there. And China, I believe, has a very, very positive history with World Cup tournaments in the past. So it'd be really, really nice for them to add this trophy to their proverbial cabinet.
All right, let's take a look at the teams. Eric Rios, who's actually 3-0 in matches throughout the entirety of the World Cup so far, got top 8 at the Oceania International Championships in 2020, top 4 at the Latin American International Championships, top 8 at the World Championships even. A very accomplished player. We'll be running a team of Xerneas, Incineroar, Rillaboom, Urshifu Rapid Strike, Amoonguss, and Volcarona.
Yeah, this is giving me flashbacks. I just played against this team in Desafio earlier today, so I'm interested to see if it's the same sort of movesets, the same items, all that sort of jazz as what I played against. But maybe I'll have some good insight into this. We'll see how it goes and whether or not he decides to lean heavily on that Xerneas or use the Volcarona as more of an offensive threat with sort of quiver dance, shenaniganry, and all that jazz.
Yeah, it really depends on the matchup, whether you bring in the Xerneas or the Volcarona, or bring both, which prioritize in terms of getting those stat boosts. So if we want to take a look at Zay's team to maybe get a sneak peek at that matchup, Zay is actually 5-1 for the entirety of the World Cup so far. Got top 8 at the Jelly Bralum Tour, which is one of those China-specific tournaments that they run, and getting some very fantastic placements in the Battle Stadium seasons. Is running Calyrex Shadow, Incineroar, Rillaboom, Urshifu Rapid Strike, Nihilego, and Whimsicott. So this is identical to the team I think we saw Alex run last round. So really, it should be curious to see how these two trainers are going to pilot the same team really back to back.
Yeah, it's also another flashback moment for me. I played against Italy last week, so flashback central here. I'm really interested mostly on the Whimsicott, because there have been a couple of different variations of that Whimsicott. Some running Taunt, some running Encore in that slot instead. Some of them running Rocky Helmet. So there's a lot of different ways that you could potentially run that Whimsicott. Item-wise, this is looking almost exactly like the team that I thought it was, but with a Rocky Helmet on the Amoonguss, which is a little bit different. So that means that I can't get too cocky with, I know exactly what's going to happen here, because it could be a little bit different when it comes to sets and spreads as well.
It's also Pokemon, so I feel like anytime a commentator gets a little bit overconfident, you do sort of sneak that commentator's curse in as well. But it should be an exciting matchup, as really could go the offense here for Eric, who sends in Rillaboom and Xerneas to start. Zay on the opposing side of the field, sending in that Nihilego and Rillaboom zone.
So the first important thing is going to be, well, we see that the Grassy Surge is a little bit faster on the side of Zay. So that's going to be pretty nice. You know, if the Rillaboom is faster for the Xerneas partner, then you could potentially fake out that Rillaboom and just go for a fake out Geomancy, which is every Xerneas player's, you know, ultimate dream. But Eric is going to have to contend with the fact that his fake out will potentially be slower. It is still the possibility of a speed tie, but you never really want to play that game. So going to opt instead for the protect, and we're seeing the reveal on the moveset of the Xerneas here. So it's a sub Xerneas, foregoing that spread damage that we see from Dazzling Gleam, and sub Xerneas has really been picking up in the meta a little bit. It becomes very, very scary to deal with. It's not really you know, wide guard's not going to help you. Not that there is a wide guard on Zay's side of the field, but there's a lot of a lot of the answers to Xerneas that are very common in the meta struggle with that substitute variation.
And interestingly enough, that Nihilego foregoing targeting the Xerneas at all this turn. Instead, Meteor Beam going to consume a power herb of its own to ensure that attack happens in a single turn. But Meteor Beam, you know, not going to deal super effective damage to the Amoonguss, as it were, bringing it down to below half of its health. But Amoonguss certainly able to get that health back thanks to the help of Regenerator. Xerneas will be able to successfully use Geomancy this turn, just to give a little bit of a refresh. This means that it will get a +2 boost in special attack, special defense, and speed. But I think more importantly, you know, having the Amoonguss out on the field next to the Xerneas does mean that Eric can pretty safely go for a substitute next turn, assuming that whatever Pokemon is coming in off this U-turn on Zay's side of the field is not going to be able to hit both slots like a Calyrex Shadow potentially could.
A very, very good turn for Eric here. I think he was expecting to protect or the switch out on that Xerneas side of the field, so really thinking to himself, okay, I don't have to worry about a Geomancy. But the first hurdle for the Geomancy player is now, you know, getting that Geomancy up. It's a lot harder than it seems. It seems with Power Herb like, oh, I just click one button and then I'm ready to go. But the positional matchups that the sort of counter Xerneas player has to go through, a lot of that game plan revolves around preventing that Geomancy from going up in the first place rather than dealing with it after it's gone up. So it's going to be a lot harder for Zay to kind of play around this here, but he will have the opportunity to potentially fake out this turn.
He will have the opportunity to fake out. This Incineroar could also have access to Parting Shot or Snarl, which will slowly lower the special attack of that Xerneas and at least make it less of an offensive threat. Eric switching out that Amoonguss into his own Incineroar. No substitute yet. Instead, Moonblast directly into Zay's Incineroar for a one-hit. Going to leave that Nihilego alone for a bomb, but ignoring... Instead, targeting the Incineroar does get a nice poison for its trouble, but Xerneas really happy it got that KO there.
Yeah, this becomes a little awkward for both players. A very good turn for Eric there. He's going to be super thrilled with how that turn went. But the sort of standoff, stalemate kind of situation between Xerneas and the Nihilego is a little bit funny because, you know, Sludge Bomb, of course, does pretty good damage, being a super effective move, but we do have to consider that +2 from the Geomancy on the special defense side. So Xerneas and Nihilego do still have a little bit of an issue KOing each other because, yeah, Nihilego resists the Moonblast, but it is +2, so they're both essentially hitting each other for about, I would assume that both are going to be 2-hit KOs at this point, so it's going to be an interesting sort of situation to see whether they just both try to focus on the allied Pokemon, or at one point one of them decides, you know what, no, now it's time to go, and just go after the other heavy hitter.
Yeah, it certainly has been an interesting start to this game too, because unlike the previous round that we featured, you know, both Zay and Eric are really going on the hyper offense here with the Nihilego and the Xerneas already charged up, and Incineroar switching out to bring back that Intimidate and Fake Out later, as it does, sending in the Amoonguss to take attacks in its stead as Xerneas protects itself from a Fake Out from the opposing Rillaboom, and Sludge Bomb from that Nihilego finally able to connect with the Amoonguss and does get a KO.
Yeah, that was a really nice turn for Zay. Eric found himself in a bit of an awkward spot there, but the protect was the safest play, and Zay very well just like analyzing that and going, okay, well, I'm just going to take out whatever is on the other side. Of course, he doesn't know about the Rillaboom until this moment, but Eric didn't have much he could do there. Something was going to go down on his side of the field. He just kind of had to choose what.
Yeah, and now that Eric has the Rillaboom and Xerneas on the field and the Incineroar in the back, there's really not much he has that can stop this Nihilego. It's still at full health. It has a +2 boost at this point in its special attack. That is one really scary Ultra Beast.
Yeah, and I think like we're starting to get to the point where if it does land another KO, the Xerneas might still go down in a single Sludge Bomb. I'm not entirely sure what the counts are going to be. It depends a lot on the spreads. Some Nihilegos are built super bulky. I think the sub Xerneas tends to be not very bulky because you take the sort of safety of having that substitute as an option and you transfer that into just having a little bit more in the way of special attack. So if this is an offensive Nihilego, then we may be looking at a +3 one-hit KO onto the Xerneas, whereas if it's a little bit more bulky, it might still be able to live. This Moonblast, though, is going to take out the restricted on Zay's side of the field, and he's really leaning heavily on that Nihilego now.
Yeah, I really like Eric's strategy here, since Eric is targeting down the Pokemon that isn't Nihilego on Zay's side of the field, and I think trying to force like a 2v1 or whatever against it, as, you know, Nihilego can't attack both Pokemon at the same time, so that would at least guarantee that you're able to connect some damage with it.
Yeah, this is another awkward turn for Eric, though, because he can protect the Xerneas. I think if Zay just goes fake out Sludge Bomb, he's guaranteed a KO. So he's going to do that. The Protect is going to come out on the Xerneas, which is the best thing that Eric can do in this situation. But the Instant that's coming in is going to go down, and that's going to mean that a +3 Nihilego is ready to go. And then the question really becomes, does that put out enough damage to want to KO the Xerneas? Now, there's a possibility that he goes for a substitute, but all that's going to happen is the sub's going to go down, and now it's definitely going to be in KO range. So it's a bit of a chess game now where Eric needs to maybe go for a couple of reads and maybe just, at this point, hope that he doesn't get one-hit KO'd.
Well, that Protect will stop it from one turn, but Zay's very smartly targeting that Incineroar, fake out Sludge Bomb for the KO. Eric down to his final 2 Pokemon. The Rillaboom coming back in will have access to fake out, which could be an out for Eric, but you also have to wonder, like, if the Rillaboom plus the Xerneas with like a Grassy Glide plus a Moonblast would even be enough to knock out the Nihilego at this point.
Yeah, another question is whether or not the Rillaboom on Zay's side of the field goes down to a single Moonblast. A lot of them will be Assault Vest, and I don't play Xerneas myself, so off the top of my head, I'm not entirely sure if it would live a Moonblast, but I guess we're maybe going to find out. He's not going to go for the sub, he's just going to go for the KO, and well, this is one of the moments of truth in this game, is not going to go on for very much longer, Gabby.
Yeah, it's kind of nice knowing that we're guaranteed to wrap up a couple of turns, but you're absolutely right. It is going to come down to just how much damage this Nihilego takes, and I do like how Eric is still being cautious and, you know, prioritizing the damage on the Rillaboom, but Nihilego is such a scary Pokemon when you allow it to get these beast boosts like it did.
Yeah, the fake out comes into the Nihilego, but a Grassy Glide, if that's into that Xerneas, that's definitely going to hit it into range for the Nihilego. So now we really have, what are the outs here for Eric? He does take out the Rillaboom. That's very, very good. I guess the question is whether or not the Nihilego can survive a double up, I guess. It's a little bit awkward for Zay, but if he does survive the double up and take out the Xerneas with some grassy terrain recovery, maybe he's able to survive another Grassy Glide?
I mean, couldn't Xerneas also possibly go for a substitute here if he's unsure and try and buy another turn?
It could, but we're not going to see that out of Eric. So Protect comes in. Oh, a sub would have been a fantastic play there.
Yeah, that protect is unfortunate, but I do like how Zay is stalling out the remainder of these grassy terrain turns with a protect from this Nihilego. So both trainers still in the same spot as they were in a previous turn, but with one less turn of grassy terrain, that does mean that this Rillaboom will eventually be forced to attack slower than the Nihilego and the Xerneas.
Yeah, I do have to wonder whether or not the clicks on the Moonblast are a little bit risky, but no, okay, that does. Well, I was talking about bulky Nihilegos. That's not a bulky Nihilego, Gabby.
Yeah, that's some great confirmation here for Eric as he's able to win game one of the set and possibly bring the match score back up to a tie here against Zay. And what an incredible endgame that was. And, you know, getting to see that the Nihilego wasn't the bulky variant, but was still able to get all of those beast boosts. I feel like that has to influence how Eric plays into this game too, because you just don't want to risk that Nihilego sitting on the field as long as it did, you know?
Mm-hmm. There's some other couple. There's another couple of nice sort of confirmations that come out of just the sheer amount of damage that Rillaboom went for. You can see it's not particularly bulky on the defensive side, but that probably means that it's very close to max speed, max special attack, and what that translates into is that it's probably a 2-hit KO from Moonblast as well after a Geomancy. So that might be something that we see come into effect in the next game. But overall, that was a really interesting back and forth, fast-paced game. And you know, with the meta sort of where it is, with both of these restricteds being very snowbally Pokemon in the form of Xerneas and Calyrex Shadow Rider, a lot of the faster games tend to just be, oh, I got a better turn one and now I'm going to snowball. It's kind of rare that the close games are as short as that. Usually the close ones are the ones that go close to timer.
Yeah, it is interesting to think about too in terms of like adjustments that these trainers will bring into game two, since given just how commanding of a start that was for Eric, and then how he immediately went on the back foot to slow things down so that he could you know, knock out the 3 other Pokemon that were at Nihilego. You have to wonder if that's something that Feng is going to or that Zay is going to recognize going into this game too, and you know, try and play around, maybe try and go a bit more on the offense as a result, knowing that that's how Eric's going to prioritize targeting.
Yeah, there was a lot to learn there. The game one of a best of 3 is almost always going to be about, obviously you want to win, but there's a much heavier emphasis in game one on just sort of figuring out where your opponent's brain is at. Like, how are they planning on playing the set? If you've never played against the opponent, maybe it's just about figuring out what kind of a player they are with their tendencies. Will they go for hard reads? Will they make the safe play? There's a lot that you can learn in that game one on both sides, so it'll be interesting to see how they adjust.
Well, already a big adjustment on the field for Eric going into this game too. Rillaboom and Amoonguss against Incineroar and Nihilego.
This is a bit of an interesting one, right? Because, of course, we do have potential for fake out on either side. The Rillaboom should be the faster one. But that Amoonguss threatening a very early Spore is also very scary. Generally speaking, on this team, the goggles are probably going to be on that Incineroar. So that's one less potential switch-in that you have to worry about. So it's going to be awkward for that Nihilego to switch out if it's concerned about a Spore coming its way.
Well, interestingly enough, Zay does go for the switch on Nihilego, sending in the Rillaboom on his side of the field, as U-turn from Eric's own Rillaboom will connect with the opposing Incineroar and give Eric the opportunity to adjust as well. This could be a great time to send in your own Incineroar, as what is better in the Series 10 metagame than getting those Intimidates down onto the opposing Incineroars and Rillaboom. All those Pokemon that tend to form the revolving door that we have become so very familiar with. Speaking of which, parting shot.
Yeah, so the revolving door is just going to keep on spinning, Gabby, and this could just be him going back into the Nihilego. That would be really interesting here, because he threatened a faster fake out with your Rillaboom, and then a Meteor Beam into that slot. There's really nothing on this team that likes taking a Meteor Beam, so that would be an extremely risky position for Eric to be in, but it's just going to be the Calyrex Shadow Rider coming out, which, you know, if it's running Psyshock, threatens a very large amount of damage into the Amoonguss, but the Spore comes out, reading the parting shot like a book. Fantastic move there by Eric, and that hurts Zay a lot.
Zay switching in that Rillaboom to the Nihilego slot almost felt like a switch to take the spore, but unfortunately for Zay, Eric was just one step ahead.
Yeah, so it's a painful moment for Zay there. We know that the Calyrex is arguably not even as important as the Nihilego in this matchup. So it's like in this kind of a matchup, when you look at his 6, you kind of treat the Nihilego as the restricted Pokemon because that's the one he needs to conserve. That's the one he needs to try to snowball with. But losing one of those hyper offensive options in the Calyrex, at least for a couple of turns, really sucks for Zay.
That Xerneas in for the Incineroar on Eric's side of the field as Calyrex staying asleep. U-turn from Zay will give him the opportunity to send the Incineroar back in to threaten a fake out and to otherwise stop the threat of a Geomancy, at least for one turn. But you have to wonder, Eric was able to call the pivot in the previous turn. If he was able to call the pivot again with this Amoonguss, whatever Pokemon Zay could be sending in, maybe put to sleep with a Spore as well, or possibly will be taking big damage from an attack that this Amoonguss has. It will be the Nihilego, and it will be put immediately sleep thanks to a Spore. Once again, what fantastic reads from Eric.
That's a bit of a questionable switch from Zay, I think. Looking at this team, I could be wrong, but this looks like a Goggles Incineroar to me. And if that's a Goggles Incineroar, that's a really painful switch into the Nihilego. The Amoonguss was in a position where it didn't really have any moves other than sporing the Rillaboom slot and hoping for a switch out. So maybe Zay feeling like he was cornered in a position where he needed to go for a risky play and just hope that his opponent was not going to make the call. But this is going to be a free Geomancy, not even needing to pay for a fake out or anything. Gets a switch into the Rillaboom, and now he's got another fake out on his side, Eric does.
And possibly, given how much damage we saw the Grassy Glide do to the Nihilego in the previous game, this would be a great opportunity for Eric to just double into that slot if he wants to guarantee a knockout. If Zay decides to switch out that Nihilego to try and save it for later, you know, yes, you can get an Intimidate down and maybe you can start dealing a little bit of less damage, but then these Pokemon are still asleep.
Yeah, and this is an interesting situation as well, where, like, you could go for a sub here if you wanted to position even better. It gets a little bit awkward if we have wake-ups going down, so a Moonblast into the Calyrex is also a little bit scary, because what do you switch into that? We already know that the Rillaboom doesn't take that hit. Though we already know that the Incin doesn't take that hit. We already know that the Calyrex doesn't take that hit because they all tried in the last game and all of them went down in just a single blast. So another question is going to be, yeah, I mean, I guess the Glide here is just a really easy way to get that Nihilego down, and even after an Intimidate, that Nihilego is going to go down to one more Grassy Glide.
Or one more Moonblast, as Calyrex will be knocked out this turn, giving Zay the opportunity to bring the Rillaboom or the Incineroar back in on his side and get access to Fake Out, which can find him some kind of opening. But which Pokemon do you even target if you know that all your opponent has to do is double into the Nihilego and they're guaranteed to knock it out?
Yeah, this is about as tough a situation as you can imagine. I believe that was the only the first turn of sleep from the Nihilego, if I'm not mistaken. So
yeah,
it's not even guaranteed to wake up this turn. It's not even guaranteed to wake up next turn, Gabby. So Zay is relying entirely on Incin and Rillaboom. Maybe if he reads the double into the Nihilego, then maybe Roar is a potential out here if he's running it. But it's not that common on Incineroars.
It isn't, and I would worry that even with the Roar, provided your Nihilego isn't able to wake up, this Xerneas is going to be free to just come back in eventually and deal decent damage with Moonblast. You know, yes, it won't be Geomancy boosted, but I think the thing that I see Zhang struggling with towards the end of this game is that he's running out of Pokemon that can successfully knock out the Xerneas.
Yeah, and we already saw Eric target into the Incineroar. It's a much safer play because you don't know if he has Roar. It's not an open Team Sheet tournament. But even if he does fake out, then what? He's just sleeping with that Nihilego. It's an extremely lazy Nihilego, gotta say. He didn't wake up from either of those sleeps. Neither of them went the full distance, but a little bit of unluck. Something that Zay can shake his head at a little bit. But yeah, I mean, Eric has just steamrolled in this second game. The first one, very back and forth. The second one, Eric got a pivotal read on turn 2, and from there, everything just spiraled out of control.
I would say even turn 1, like, it felt like he was able to just get the advantage thanks to that spore, and it really just goes to show you. Yeah, well, turn 1 and turn 2, it was just sleep, and then here we are, lazy Sunday here at the Victory Road World Cup. But it was really exciting to just see those reads be made so confidently from Eric with that Amoonguss, as we saw Amoonguss take so much damage in game 1 from the Pokemon on Zay's side of the field. Being able to stay in with that Amoonguss and confidently click that Spore button was certainly a very tough read to make.
Yeah, that is definitely a game for the people out there who are on the Amoonguss is the best non-restricted train. That's a discussion that we see on Twitter every now and then. Instant is the obvious answer. Amoonguss, though, is so oppressive in this format, and you can tell when you're forcing every team to run safety goggles and you're still an incredibly good Pokemon, even when multiple teams are running double grass and safety goggles, that just goes to show the absolute power of Amoonguss. If it can stay on the field for turn after turn after turn, it becomes more and more annoying to deal with. And it's also something that can, in longer games, that one wasn't one, but in longer games that can really start to affect your mentality as well. Even if they're not making headway as far as damaging your Pokemon or getting set up, just the Amoonguss just sitting there and clicking Spore, even if it's into a grass type, it's threatening. It's like, hey, you gonna switch out next turn? No, you're not. So a really, really well-played game there by Eric, a really, really well-played match. And Zay really took it to him in game number 1, but unfortunately just wasn't quite able to close it out for his team.
Yeah, and that actually ties up the round between Team China and Team Spain. Again, we're watching these matches in order of occurrence. So going into this final match, both teams knew, hey, all the marbles are in on this one. Whoever wins this single game will be moving on into the finals, and I cannot wait to bring it to y'all. So we're going to take a short break as we get set up for round 7 here of top 4 at the World Cup by Victory Road, sponsored by Elgato. So please stay tuned, everybody. You're not going to want to miss this next game.